Thank you very much. Next up, at UFC 282, we have Chris Curtis taking on Joaquin Buckley. Chris Curtis, 29-9 overall. He's 4-1 in his last 5. He is coming off his first UFC loss, and that was a short notice loss to Jack Hermansson. He's taking on Joaquin Buckley, 15-5 overall. 3-2 in his last 5. He's coming off that really fun loss to Nasruddin Imavov a few months ago. And this is a really interesting fight. I am surprised at these odds. I'm not saying they should be flipped or anything. I'm just surprised that people have chosen such a hard side on this, because I personally think it's a little bit tricky to break down, because if you look at their last fights, it's very clear Joaquin Buckley, right? Chris Curtis went out there, stunk up the joint against a grappler. He was outstruck, outvolumed by a grappler. Was just hit in the face 100 freaking times. I forget what the number was, but it was over 100 times. Did nothing with it. Lost that fight. Looked real stupid. Then he's fighting Joaquin Buckley, who in his last fight, yes, he also lost, but that dude was trying to rip Imavov's head off, and he knew he was down on rounds. He went out there in the third, swinging, coming forward, trying to make it happen. He showed it happen. He showed his heart. He showed his cardio. And like, if you only look at those fights, both losses, they were very different, and you got to go Buckley. But you got to factor in that Chris Curtis was coming off of a 3-round, I don't want to say war, but a very tough 3-round fight with Rodolfo Vieira. It was like a week and a half later, he flew to the other side of the world to get into another tough fight with a pretty durable guy. And I think that affected his performance a little bit. But then again, Rodolfo Vieira was outstriking him. Phil Hawes was outstriking him before he was put out, and now we know Phil Hawes absolutely has no chin whatsoever. So Joaquin Buckley is going to be the pick, but Chris Curtis is dumb dangerous. We know he's got those little short hooks, and he could put anybody out with them. And if Joaquin comes charging in, that could happen to him. He's been put out before. Kevin Holland put him out. I mean, Joaquin has been put out. He's had some iffy success against strikers, where Chris Curtis has only fought grapplers in the UFC. They've only given him grapplers. So this will be like last week's main event. We'll finally get to see Chris Curtis in a striking match, because Joaquin Buckley, while he can grapple, he had 5 takedowns against Razak Al Hassan. He's not going to be grappling in his fight. So pick is Joaquin Buckley. I'm basing it off of I can trust him to come forward, swing heavy, and there's going to be a very big size difference here. But Chris Curtis is live. What do you think?
Yeah, let me just preface everything I'm about to say with, I was the original Chris Curtis fan. Like, when he came to the UFC, I told everyone he's probably going to knock out Phil Hawes. I said that he was going to knock out Brendan Allen. That's exactly what happened. But as you mentioned, the last fight is a cause for concern for Chris Curtis, and he I think he's owned up to it, right? He said, I shouldn't have acted that way because he was mad at Jack for not fighting him. He understands, like, hey, I got to do more to win those fights. As you mentioned, Buckley in his fight was just, out of control in that third round, trying to chase a finish. I think this is a difference in mentalities for these guys. Chris Curtis mentioned when he had that short notice fight, he said, listen, I might lose. If I lose, I lose. I'm here to get money. That's what it is. I think these guys have a little bit, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. You get your money. That's what you're supposed to do. That's the whole point of this all. But I think that he's a little bit more driven by, he enjoys fighting. He likes fighting. Win or lose, he's still gonna be Chris Curtis. He's not really bothered about it as much as some fighters, where Buckley seems like a guy that's super hungry. He really wants to chase a title. He thinks he can be that guy to chase a title. And you saw that in his last fight, how hungry, how determined he was. And I'm not saying, again, I don't want to be like I'm disrespecting Chris Curtis, because I'm sure he would like to be a title, whatever. It's just from what he said in the past.
Too, because he jumped down my throat when I picked against him.
Right, yeah, so I just think it's a little bit different in mentality. He's going to be live. He is probably the better technical striker in this matchup. Maybe he comes in a little bit more aggressive than he did against Jack, and that actually might hurt him in this matchup, because he is naturally just a counter puncher. That's what he is. He's got that high guard. He's waiting for that counter punch, and against Buckley, that can work really, really well. But if he comes in and tries to be that pressure fighter that he wasn't against Jack, he could run into some big issues, because Buckley is very, very explosive. I don't think he's going to go with the grappling, but could feint some takedowns just to change the eye level a little bit. But he is so explosive. He is willing to go all out for this win. So, yeah, I'm going with Buckley. I actually kind of like him a lot in this matchup. I think the odds are pretty fair at -150, -160. It shouldn't be any more wide than that because, I mean, Chris Curtis got to prove to us, almost like we're going to mention Darren Till later, almost like you got to prove to us that you can be that fighter again, not just a counter guy, but let's walk somebody down and see what happens. So I'm going Buckley in this matchup and put some action on as well. But Chris, I mean, I was your number one fan. I mean, I was the original Chris Curtis fan.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he does. He really does watch these, and when we pick against him, he makes sure he comes back and comments on every single one of them, like many comments, not just a comment, several comments on each video.
The action.
But I do like Chris Curtis, and I'm giving him a lot of leeway with that last loss. There was a lot going against him. As I mentioned, he was coming off a 3-round fight. He was on the other side of the world. He's also a 170-pounder that just decided, fuck it, I'll be a 185. That's what the UFC needed, so that's what I am now. So he's undersized in all these fights, and he's got legit power, but Phil Hawes was touching him up before he got knocked out. We watched Shaq Hermanson touch him up. Rodolfo Vieira touched him up. He won the Rodolfo Vieira fight with his takedown defense because Rodolfo Vieira was winning a lot of those striking exchanges, but he shot so many takedowns and got none of them that the judges just, it just didn't look good with the judges. So Chris Curtis, phenomenal takedown defense, and big power, but I agree. We're on the same side here. We think Joaquin Buckley gets this done. 7,700, 8,500 in DraftKings. I don't know if I'm going to play Joaquin Buckley in DraftKings because Chris Curtis is very durable. He's a tough guy. He's not a guy you're just going to knock out. And people, I see you in the comments saying, oh, Buckley's going to knock him out. Dude, Chris Curtis is tough as shit. Good chin. Like, he's not... Buckley hits like a freight train, but it's not like, this isn't a heavyweight versus a lightweight. So I do not think Chris Curtis gets put out. I think he probably loses the decision where he's waiting a little too long to counter, and Joaquin wins it with volume. You agree?
Yeah, I mean, with these styles, if it goes to a decision, the judges are going to love the action of Buckley more. Unless Curtis hurts him, obviously that's a bit. Yeah. But when you look at visuals, the way that these guys fight, Chris Curtis is very walk, high guard, and Buckley's all over the place, big power shots. So if this does go to a decision, I mean, the judges are going to like the style of Buckley a lot more for sure. But yeah, Chris Curtis is very durable, and you're not going to be able to take him down. So.
No, I completely agree. So it's a striking match, and Joaquin's going to have the power, the volume. But I don't think the power is going to mean much other than maybe some potential damage. So not going to do DraftKings because it's just going to be significant strikes, and total strikes is going to be the whole scoring, and that may not score that well. Monkey Knife Ice strike line 55 to 53. That's a tricky line. Because Chris can be sort of low volume at times, but I think it's a more and more. I think it's only striking. I think it's 15 minutes. So I got to go more and more here, and that's every single strike, not just significant. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's more and more. I think Buckley's gonna bring out the strikes of Chris Curtis, and these guys are gonna go at it.
Well, become a premium member at WeWantPicks.com. At the top is a button, become a member. It's only $10 a month. We have given you 51 units of net profit over the last 4 events, and that does not include the member-only safety parlay. I keep that out of the unit calculation because that's its own sort of entity. WeWantPicks.com, it is only $10 because when all the prop bets drop for this fight, which they have not yet. When all the prop bets drop for this fight, I think we'll find some spots because I think there's some opportunities here for sure. Chris Curtis wins inside the distance decision, no action. That's probably a solid bet because he probably loses the decision.
Plus 150.
You know what? I may go ahead and jump on that when we're done here because Chris Curtis is durable enough to make it, survive, and he can win inside the distance. So I will probably actually end up...
Yeah, that's not a bad one.
I'll probably end up doing that as well. There's your free premium bet right there. If you're a premium member, bets like that just pop up on your phone the very minute that we...
That's not like a typical one because Buckley is a dangerous dude, but that definitely is something you should put a little bit. Plus 150, yeah, that's probably pretty good.
And Chris is so durable. Go through his record. Yeah, he has been knocked out.
Yeah,
because
it feels like you're jinxing him. I don't know if you're trying to jinx him, but it feels like you keep saying how durable he is. So I don't know what's about to happen. So sorry, Chris.
Well, yeah, I mean, that does happen.